The Legend of King Arthur. A graded reader, level A2. Introduction. Many centuries ago, Britain was a wild and dangerous place. There were many small kingdoms, but there was no great king to lead them. The people were often hungry and tired of fighting. They wanted a leader who was brave and kind. High in the mountains and deep in the forests, magic still lived. The most famous person in the land was not a soldier, but a wizard named Merlin. Merlin knew the future and he had a plan for Britain. Chapter 1: The Sword in the Stone. One cold winter morning, a strange thing appeared in London. In front of the great church, there was a large square stone. On top of the stone, there was an anvil, and inside the anvil was a beautiful sword. The sword was made of gold and silver. On the stone, there were words in gold: "The person who pulls this sword from this stone is the true King of England." Many strong men tried to pull the sword out. Kings and knights from all over the country came to London. They pulled and they pushed with all their strength. However, the sword did not move. It stayed perfectly still inside the stone. Merlin watched and waited because he knew the time was not right. Chapter 2: The Young Boy Arthur. Far away from London, a boy named Arthur lived with a knight named Sir Ector. Arthur was a simple boy and he did not know his real parents. He was the servant for Sir Ector's son, Kay. Arthur was kind, honest, and very fast. One day, Sir Ector and Kay decided to go to London for a big tournament. Arthur went with them to look after their horses and their armor. When they arrived in London, the city was full of people. Kay was excited because he wanted to fight in the tournament. But suddenly, Kay realized something terrible. "Arthur," he shouted, "I forgot my sword at the inn. Go and get it for me now." Arthur ran back to the inn, but the doors were locked. He did not know what to do. Chapter 3: A King is Found. Arthur ran through the streets of London. He saw a church with a big stone in the garden. He saw a sword inside the stone. "I can take this sword for Kay," he thought. He did not read the golden words on the stone. He walked to the stone and took the handle of the sword. He pulled it slowly and easily. The sword came out like it was in butter. Arthur ran back to Kay and gave him the sword. Kay looked at the sword and his face turned white. "Father, look!" Kay cried to Sir Ector. Sir Ector was shocked. They went back to the church and Arthur put the sword back in the stone. Then, he pulled it out again in front of everyone. The people shouted, "Arthur is our king!" Chapter 4: The Lady of the Lake. Arthur was now the king, but he needed a special sword for battle. Merlin took Arthur to a quiet, magical lake. The water was very green and still. "Look," Merlin said, pointing to the middle of the water. Suddenly, an arm in white silk rose out of the water. The hand was holding a magnificent sword. "That is the Lady of the Lake," Merlin whispered. "And that sword is Excalibur." A beautiful woman walked across the water to the shore. She gave the sword to Arthur. "Take this sword and use it to protect the people," she said. Arthur took Excalibur and felt a great power. The sword was light and the scabbard was magical too. Merlin told Arthur that with this scabbard, he would never lose much blood in a fight. Chapter 5: The Great Castle of Camelot. Arthur wanted to build a place where all good people could live in peace. He built a wonderful castle called Camelot. The walls were high and the towers were white. King Arthur married a beautiful and clever woman named Guinevere. She was the daughter of King Leodegrance. For their wedding, Guinevere's father gave Arthur a very special gift. It was a giant table made of wood. The table was round so that no one sat at the head. This meant that every knight at the table was equal. Arthur called his best friends and bravest soldiers to sit with him. They were the Knights of the Round Table. They promised to help the weak and to always be honest. Life in Camelot was full of music, light, and hope. Chapter 6: Sir Lancelot of the Lake. Sir Lancelot was the most famous knight in the world. He came from a land across the sea to find King Arthur. He wanted to be a member of the Round Table. Lancelot was very strong and he never lost a fight in the forest. Arthur loved Lancelot like a brother and they were best friends. The king gave Lancelot a special place at the big table. However, Lancelot had a secret. He was in love with Queen Guinevere. Guinevere also liked the brave knight very much. This secret was very dangerous for the peace of Camelot. Some other knights began to talk and whisper in the dark corners of the castle. Arthur did not want to listen to the bad stories about his friend. He wanted his kingdom to stay happy and united. Chapter 7: The Quest for the Holy Grail. One night, a strange and bright light appeared in the hall of Camelot. It was more beautiful than the sun or the moon. In the middle of the light, the knight saw the Holy Grail. It was a magical cup that many people wanted to find. The air in the room suddenly smelled like the best flowers in the world. Then, the cup disappeared into the clouds. "We must find this cup," cried the knights of the Round Table. Arthur was sad because he knew his friends were leaving the castle. "This journey will be very long and difficult," the king said. Many knights left Camelot the next morning on their horses. They traveled to far lands, deep caves, and dark, scary forests. Only the best and most honest knights could see the Grail. After a long time, Sir Galahad found the cup because his heart was pure. Chapter 8: The Evil Mordred. While the knights were away, a man named Mordred came to the castle. Mordred was Arthur's son, but he was a very bad and angry man. He did not like the king and he did not like the Round Table. Mordred wanted to be the king of Britain and stay in the White Castle. He told the people of London that Arthur was a weak leader. He promised the people more money and more food if they followed him. Mordred waited for a moment when the king was away from the city. He wanted to steal the crown and sit on the golden throne. When Arthur returned from his travels, he heard the terrible news. The king was very sad and his heart was heavy with pain. "I must fight for my kingdom and my people," Arthur said to his soldiers. But Merlin was now very old and he could not help the king with magic anymore. Chapter 9: The Last Battle. The armies of King Arthur and Mordred met on a big, flat field. The sky was grey and the air was very cold that morning. It was a terrible day for the history of Britain. The sound of swords and shields was very loud. Many brave knights of the Round Table died in the tall grass. Arthur looked for Mordred in the middle of the great battle. Finally, the king saw his enemy near the water. Arthur hit Mordred with his long spear with all his strength. But before Mordred died, he hit the king's head with his heavy sword. The king fell to the ground and he could not move. The battle was over, but the dream of Camelot was broken. Only one knight, Sir Bedivere, was still alive with the king. He cried because his king was very hurt. Chapter 10: The Return of the Sword. Arthur was very weak and he knew that he was dying. "Sir Bedivere," the king whispered with a small voice. "Take my sword, Excalibur, and throw it into the middle of the lake." Bedivere took the sword, but it was so beautiful that he did not want to throw it. He hid the sword in the bushes 2 times and went back to the king. "What did you see in the water?" Arthur asked him. "I saw only the wind and the waves," Bedivere answered. Arthur was angry and told him to go back again. Finally, Bedivere threw the magical sword into the deep water. Suddenly, a hand came out of the lake and caught the sword. The hand shook the sword 3 times and then pulled it under the water. Then, a black boat appeared on the lake with 3 queens in black dresses. They took Arthur into the boat to help him. Conclusion: the black boat took King Arthur to a magical island called Avalon. Avalon was a place of peace where there was no pain or winter. Some people say the great king died there on the island. But other people believe that Arthur is only sleeping in a secret cave. They say he will return when Britain needs a hero again. The stories of the Round Table lived for many, many years. People in every country still remember the name of Arthur and his knights. He was the once and future king of the British people. His legend of kindness and bravery will never end. The end.